Welcome to the OCD Experiment podcast with your host, Dr. Rob Lancer. So we're at the OCD Experiment podcast. It's been 26 personal professional years since I've been working with OCD. On my own and also as a professional licensed psychologist. Quick waiver, this is for educational purpose only. Does not substitute for therapeutic. With that out of the way, let's discuss the OCD experiment. So 5 years of archive material I have, and due to perfectionism, I never released it. So the experiment is over the next year, I want to release my material, and the experiment is how much of an impact can it make and how many people can it help. Now, OCD is like this mystified type of disorder. Not just hand washing. It's not just counting. It's not symmetry. It's not thinking a certain way or hoarding. It's much more complicated than that. And the more you learn, the more you realize you need to learn more. So the more you learn, you realize the less you know, because OCD has so many twists and turns. However, over the last 10 years, I've come up with a lot of concepts, and the concept that I want to present on this first OCD experiment is the 5 horsemen of OCD. What is the 5 horsemen of OCD? I have to give everything cool names because it sounds better. So there's 5 horsemen. I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you have OCD, if you're a loved one listening to this, participate in the experiment, let me introduce them. First one, doubt, the what ifs. Second, uncertainty, followed only by anxiety and then irrational fear. And the 5th horseman is frustration. Let's go through them one by one. So, doubt, the what if thoughts. These are the intrusive thoughts that just linger and create havoc in a person's mind. They're the intrusive, unwanted what-if thoughts. Not what-if positive, but what-if catastrophe. What if the worst-case scenario? These are the thoughts that we want to get rid of, but we can't. Second is uncertainty. Uncertainty, not the uncertainty that everyone lives with, whether it's going to rain or not, but the uncertainty of the possibilities of all the negative things happening, while negating the probability that it will happen. Let me explain. A loved one comes to you and says, what if I hit someone with a car? Or what if this is dirty? You say the probability of this happening is so little I wouldn't worry about it. But for someone with OCD, it's inverted. It might be a 99% chance that nothing will happen, but the OCD mind focuses and magnifies the 1%. The 1% becomes the 99%. And the 99% probability that it won't happen becomes minuscule, small, 1%. That's uncertainty. Focusing on the negative possibilities. Next comes fear. Irrational fear, the type of fear that you can't reason with. It's irrational fear. Just like the irrational thoughts, what if thoughts, irrational fear. What do I mean by that? Irrational fear. It's a fear that is counterintuitive, a fear that cannot be weighed out, discounted by thinking about it. It's a fear that something horrific will happen, and no matter how much you reason with a person with the anxiety, anxious mind, OCD, no matter how much you rationalize with them, it's never enough to justify that the fear won't happen. It's an irrational fear. Next is frustration. If you have a piece of paper, write this down. If you don't, imagine in your mind. On the left is anxiety. On the right is anger. In the middle is frustration. Anxiety could lead to frustration, could lead to anger. Anger could lead to frustration, could lead to anxiety. Now, I want to clarify something. This is not the type of anger where someone punches a hole through the wall. This is the type of anger that's self-directed. The anger that someone knows they shouldn't be doing something, they should be able to get past it, but they can't. It's a self-directed anger, which leads to frustration in oneself, which leads to anxiety. And the anxiety could lead to frustration, which could lead to anger. Now, I left anxiety for last because anxiety is the jet fuel. It is the force behind making uncertainty, doubt, fear, frustration even worse. If you took out the anxiety, if you took out the quotient of the anxiety, the what-if thoughts wouldn't be hard to deal with. The uncertainty, worst-case scenarios could be manageable. The fear would be manageable, and the frustration would be manageable. You put them all into a balloon, and then you put anxiety, which is like helium, you fill it up, and it goes to flight. Anxiety is the fire that makes the pot boil. It's the ingredient that makes the uncertainty, the doubt, the fear, the frustration so intense that you can't get rid of it. That's the fifth horseman. Doesn't matter what order you put them in, they're the same. So, this is no major breakthrough. I'm not going to win an award. This is something everyone knows who has OCD. But the question is, what do you do with it? Let's lay down some rules of how to deal with these 5 horsemen. 1, never rationalize with an irrational thought. The rational is a square, irrational is a circle. You'll never put a rational square inside of a circle. The more you do, the more frustrated you get, the more anxious you get. The more you feel like something is wrong with you. The instinct is to go and try to figure it out. Try to reason out why this irrational thought won't happen. Try to reason out the probability or the possibility of it not happening. But that just fuels it. So 1, never rationalize with an irrational thought. 2, don't try to avoid, don't try to negate, don't try to replace a negative thought. These are all poor reactions. They're just going to fuel it again even more. Think of a tennis ball being thrown against the wall. The harder you throw it, the faster it's going to come back. Well, the more you try to push these thoughts out, the intrusive thoughts out, the unwanted, anxious thoughts out, the stronger they're going to come back. So that's 2. Don't try to control the thoughts. Don't avoid them. Don't push them out. They'll come back stronger. 3. Well, if you can't avoid the thoughts and you can't rationalize with them, what can you do? And that's the 3rd thing. You can control your reaction. The way you react to your intrusive thoughts, to the anxious thoughts, will be the most important thing you could do. In a situation with OCD, with the anxious mind, with anxiety, where everything is out of control, the one thing that is in control is your reaction. Just like in most situations in life. What happens to us is out of our control. What we do with it, our reaction, is in our control. The experiment we will be going through, the OCD techniques and strategies that I use in my practice. Plus, I'll be incorporating resiliency training, emotional intelligence training, communications, how to communicate your feelings to others, mental toughness training, and given the difficulty of this subject we're dealing with. We're going to decipher what's part of it, what makes it up. Yeah, we have the 5 horsemen, but how about all the other elements that keep this thing moving? So welcome to the OCD Experiment. I challenge you to follow along with each episode. Challenge yourself. Conquer the enemy within.